Morning, Steve. Morning,
Good
Steve.
morning. Good morning.
How's things at the beach?
Great. Gotta change that.
Good morning, gentlemen.
Good morning.
Morning.
Morning, Keith.
Ooh, I like the beach.
Bill looks a grumpy, Craig.
I'm squinting, but the sun's in my eyes. I haven't seen the sun for 3 weeks.
Yeah, I know.
I got this one little Venetian blind shadow across my eyes. If I go up or down, it's right on my eyes. That's okay. I won't be able to see the fine print today.
Yeah, exactly.
Happy New Year, everybody.
Yeah, same to
To
you.
you.
It's got to be better than last year.
Oh my goodness. It certainly isn't starting out that way, though, is
No, it's not.
it?
That was quite a performance in Washington yesterday.
We had 3 guys from our company attend that. And we were looking on TV to see if they were in cuffs or if they were being dragged to the ground. But yeah, 3 of our guys took off to attend that rally yesterday. Or riot, or whatever you want to call it.
I can guarantee you that the cell block at the Metro Police in Washington was full last night.
I'm sure.
Hey Tom, I assume you're the person who takes care of the reorg part.
What?
You start the reorganization process.
Yes.
Let me mute myself.
Morning, Tom.
Hey, Bill.
Happy New Year to you.
Same to you, Bill. I see you got out of Chicago before you got snowed in.
You know what? The timing was absolutely perfect, because they started getting ice the next day.
There's nothing worse than Lake Michigan in the winter.
Amen.
Oh, man, that's wow.
Somerset was a little iffy, though, but that's always that way along the PA Turnpike. But
Oh, did you drive out?
yeah,
Oh, wow. Okay.
yeah, I don't feel comfortable getting on an airplane right now.
Can't blame you for that.
Good morning, everyone.
Morning, Pat.
Morning, Pat. I got your voicemail.
Okay, thanks, Bill.
Yeah, that's a wonderful thing to hear first thing in the morning.
Yeah, my day starts out well.
Yeah.
You haven't been here.
Hey, Greg. Morning. Happy New Year.
Happy New Year too, Bill.
John Woodward or John Gallen? I have John on my screen. It's John Woodward. Got
John Gallen and John Woodward both.
it. Is John Gallen here?
Yes.
Good morning.
Oh, hi, John.
Morning, John.
Morning, John and John. Hi, neighbor.
Yep. Well, it's 8 o'clock. I guess we should start, right?
Absolutely.
All right, so it's 8 a.m. We'll call the meeting to order. Melissa, we do a roll call.
Keith Starr,
Here.
Tom Mull,
Here.
John Gallen,
Here.
Steve Brunner,
Here.
and Greg Portner.
Here.
Okay. Tom, do you want to do the reorg?
Yeah. I'd like to make a motion that we reappoint Steve Brunner as chairman of the Personnel Committee.
Second. If you need it from a non-council person, Tom, or how do you?
Pardon me?
Do you need a second from a council person or just from anyone on the committee?
Committee member.
Wait, 1 minute, Tom, you said Personnel Committee.
I meant Finance and
Yeah,
Administration.
I mean, I'll second that, that Steve be permanently,
Okay,
All
so
in-
your motion
All
on
in
the
favor,
floor.
say aye.
Aye.
Ayes have it. I'd like to make a motion. We appoint Keith Durr, Vice Chairman of the Finance and Administration Committee.
I'll
So
second
moved.
that also.
Second.
Second.
All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Ayes have it. Back to you, Chair.
Well, then here we go. Welcome to another year.
Mm-hmm.
It's all better than last. All right, the next thing on the list is public comment, and please note that all public comment should be related to the subject matter of the jurisdiction of the Borough Council Committee and Board for this meeting. And it shall be limited to the public concerns, official action, deliberations that or may come from the Borough Council Committee or Board. So please, you have 5 minutes if anybody wants to speak, and it must be specific to the Finance and Admin Committee. Anybody out there like to speak?
I just have a quick question. Is there, what is the procedure with assigning members? I see people popping up on committees and I don't understand what is the procedure for admitting people on committees. And I did not see any action at some point. That's just for my information. Thank you. That's it.
You want to touch on that, Chris, or should I just tell everybody I volunteered for the job? Chris Hartman, you frozen?
I don't know if you can hear me, but I don't have any audio.
I can hear you. Chris Hartman, you there? All right, now we're having some fun. What's it say? I can't say. No.
No
No
audio.
audio. Great. Melissa, you want to check into that?
Sure.
We'll give it a minute, see if anybody can get their audio back.
Can you hear us?
I can hear you now. I didn't hear any of Adrian's question though.
Yeah, let's do the question again.
So my question was about how do we assign people to committees? I see people popping up and I have not seen, I don't know how they're appointed to committees. That's the only thing. I know how council members are appointed to committees, but then, like I said, even on other committees, I see some people that I don't know when they came up, when were they appointed, how were they appointed?
Okay, well, the Wyomissing Code has provisions regarding the composition of the committees and who's eligible to be on the committees. I don't recall if the appointing procedure is stated in the Wyomissing Code. Typically, the president and council appoints. I don't know if Tom, if you can refresh my memory on how that occurs.
Historically speaking, the president of council has made all appointments to the committees with the input of the members, the council members on the committees. That's generally how it's been done. It's been done before I started.
Yeah, I mean, that's as a general matter, and this goes beyond Wyomissing, with regard to borough activities, generally speaking, in Pennsylvania, there's a lot of business conducted by the committees of boroughs in Pennsylvania, and it is typically a prerogative of the president of council to appoint those committees.
Is there documentation of this stuff? That's my only thing, because my only question was that I see people appearing and I have not seen any, procedure to assign these people in place. I've been at all your meetings, and I don't recall, maybe it's me, but I don't recall hearing assignments or voting on assignments, or how does one get to be on these committees? That was my
But the-
question. What's the procedure, and where is the paper trail on this thing?
All right. Well, the president of council announces the appointments to the committees, but I don't recall, the manner in which those announcements are issued. I mean, we can review that and get back to you on, what documentation exists with regard to the announcement of those committee assignments.
Adrian, this is Michelle. We have a list that's updated every year that shows every committee, every appointment to it, and when their term expires. So if, through the right to know open records request, if you requested a copy of that, we would obviously provide you with one.
It's on the website, I believe.
Yeah. So
I know that they might be available under the right to know, but it was just something that, like I said, people appear, and there seems to be no. I'm not saying that there is no list somewhere that I could find, but it's just like I said, it certainly appears that we're just, friends are popping up, and nobody, nobody votes, nobody has a say or question why we assign certain people and not other people. That's the thing. It's how come this goes. It seems that it's happening behind the scenes, and nobody has, the public that has no control or no accountability on who you assign to committees. That's basically it.
If I may, I know I've been on the finance committee for a long time, and even before I was involved with council years and years ago. And I believe Tom or Chris, correct me if I'm wrong, but the president of council selects those council members that he or she wishes that may have some expertise in finance, insurance, business type of relationships, and assign them to the committee. I believe, Chris and Tom, the code also specifies that I think the borough treasurer is assigned to the finance committee, as well as one member at large, which is John Gallen. And so I think, as far as finance is concerned, I believe that's how that works.
And that's right. The composition of the committees is determined by council by the enactment of the ordinances that establish the identity of the standing committees and also the composition of those committees. But then the appointing authority is through the president of council. So there's no official action by council with regard to the appointment of the committees, other than, the enactment of those ordinances that set the rules for the composition of the committees.
Right.
So it's basically at the pleasure of the council president. In other words, it's just one person who decides who are on those committees, whether, they're not unelected officials that have a right to vote, and just the council president basically decides at his own will who goes there, and there is no trail whatsoever of that decision-making process. Is that correct? Because all I've heard from Mr. Portner is his beliefs. I'm not asking for beliefs here. I'm asking for facts, and we've seen what beliefs do.
I'd like to speak because I think the only person you could be referring to is me, Adrian, because I'm the citizen member of the committee. Everyone else is a council member.
Well, except the treasurer. In this case,
Wasn't specifically you, but including you, I've seen this happening in many other committees.
Well, let's talk about this committee.
A personal attack
Can we
here.
move on? Can we move
Yeah, I
on?
mean, we're supposed to be talking about business, but just to give you a little perspective, Adrian, I've served on this committee for 13 or 14 years. I'm a former member of council and was chairman of the committee for 3 years. So there's historical background in the rationale for how we were chosen. Greg Portner's in the same position.
That's
He
correct.
was on this committee when I was elected to council in 2007. So he has background in historical knowledge. That's why Tom Mole might have asked us to serve.
And
I can't address any other committee, but I think we should move on.
yep, we're going to move on, and I thank everybody who is on this committee. So,
Thank you.
Phyllis, if you would like to start with the cash update.
Year ended with cash balances totaling $8,609,000. That balance is $40,000 less than November, and $1,039,000 more than the end of 2019. Rates remain unchanged at historic lows of just 0.1%. Prior to the pandemic, the ICS account was the investment vehicle for the reserves. In March of 2020, the ICS rate dropped lower than the local VIS rate, and so all cash was moved back to the local VIS rate. And now the rates are even. So we really have no investment vehicle that is active. I was wondering if the committee is interested in exploring CD options.
You're fading in and out.
Yeah.
You're breaking up, Phyllis. There's something wrong.
Yeah, I am at home working on a laptop, and that's the only microphone available. Can you hear me okay?
The last two sentences, you were great.
Okay, I will lean into the laptop as much as possible. I was questioning whether there was interest in exploring CD options since the ICS vehicle is no longer an attractive investment.
Well, I don't see any reason why we can't investigate it.
Okay. The debt that was associated with this does require that we maintain our accounts at VIST, but there should be some CD options that we can investigate. Is there an amount or a term that anyone might be interested in?
I think you got to do some investigating and get some options first, and then we can look at it.
Okay. I would be comfortable with anywhere between 3 and 4 million sitting in reserves, leaving the balance liquid. I will ask for rates for those amounts and see what the term options are. I'll have that information available for the next meeting.
Sounds good.
Moving on. December added 322,000 to the surplus, bringing the year-end surplus to 1,179,000. That would bring the total overall fund balance to 9,500,000. Of that amount, 654,000 is in reserves for future projects and commitments. 240,000 is reserved for future MS4 commitments. 17,000 in insurance proceeds has been reserved towards the purchase of the replacement police vehicle. That vehicle has been delivered, and payment for that vehicle is actually in today's check run. 150,000 has been reserved for future Borough Hall renovations. 87,000 has been reserved towards the 4th Street construction. That's the result of grant proceeds, and we will look at the details of those that grant activity shortly. 160,000 has been reserved for future sewer upgrades. These were amounts that were approved in 2020, and the work is scheduled to commence any week now. So with 654,000 in reserves, the unreserved fund balance to begin the year is 8,845,000.
Was there any of the 4th Street project paid for in 2020?
Yes, and I do have a schedule to view next after we review our revenues.
Is it possible to include for this coming year, since we do have so many projects coming and that they're being funded, that we could add another line on this sheet, which is a recap, just showing what's the outstanding balance of what we expect to come back from the state?
I can add that at the year end, that number would be 0. We are actually receive funds that we have not yet paid out, which is why I've included it in the reserves. And I
So-
will explain that detail when we get to that bit.
So right now, we have no dollars pending repayments that we paid out.
We have engineering fees that I'll ask Michelle to explain when we get to the schedule.
Phyllis, if I may ask a question. Oh, Keith, you finished. I'm sorry. I didn't mean to.
Yeah,
No, go ahead.
no, I'm done.
All right. When we set forth the budget for the current year, what was your anticipated year-end fund balance? How did that compare with the 8,845,000 or the 9,499,000, whatever number you were using there?
Okay.
How does that compare the final? And that, I assume the numbers you gave us are pretty well final for the year.
They are fairly well final at this point.
Okay. So how
And
does
I
that
can
compare with
actually
what we
answer your
estimated?
question on the next screen, Greg.
Okay. All right. That's fine. Thank you.
All right. When we compare 2020 to 2019, you can see that revenues were greater than 19 by 271,000. Expenses were less than 2019 by 2,724,000. And so the variance compared to 2019 was 2,995,000. All the key variances that we have followed throughout the year are listed. More importantly, when we compare the 2020 results to the budget, you can see that revenues were less than budgeted by 554,000. Expenses were less than budgeted by 2,813,000. And the swing from the anticipated deficit of 1,080,000 was actually a positive variance of 2,259,000. So Greg, to answer your question, we had anticipated the fund balance to decrease by 1,080,000. Instead, it increased by 2,259,000.
So that being said, I think we could be accused of being ultra conservative, and I am proud of the fact that we did that, to be honest with you.
Well, the revenues were not as bad as we had anticipated at the beginning of the pandemic. And essentially all the capital projects were tabled. So
Yep.
all our large expenditures did not occur.
Well, I think ultimately, obviously hindsight's 2020, but at the end of the day, we did the right thing and not knowing what was going to happen to save taxpayer dollars. So, hey, moving forward, we'll get some of these capital projects done moving forward.
So if
I
we look at
have a question. Phyllis,
go ahead.
you have the box of key revenue variances. Do you have the key expense variances?
Well, the key expense variances are all the capital expenditures that we did not do. I do not have that ready for presentation, but I can certainly get you that detail.
That's okay. It was just a postponement and or a delay.
Yep. Water project, sewer project, street work, capital purchases,
Okay.
everything that was part of the revised spending plan.
If I remember right, John, I think it was right around $2 million or 2.1 million that we put on hold.
Right. That's
And
correct.
have we just pushed them forward to be to attempt to do them this year?
Not all of them.
Not
Not
correct.
all.
Correct.
Yeah, not all of them. Phyllis, and you may be touching on this later, but I think something we're going to need down the road, especially on the expense side, is we always have comparisons to the year before. I think we're going to start to need maybe comparisons to the 2 prior years for both expenses and for income, just because 2020 was such an anomaly.
Good point. Good point.
Yeah.
Okay. All right.
I'll add on to that at the end.
Okay. To move on to look at the variances that we've been following, start with the values of real estate taxes. The borough has not received any additional final notices that would indicate any change from the abstract that was received in October. So as far as we know, the bills that will be printed later this month should be based on a total value of $1,020,000,000. There are, however, 5 pending assessment appeals by owners of commercial properties in the borough. The resolution of those appeals will determine whether the bills print with a different value or potentially set us up for future refunds that may be due. So those bills will be printed in the next few weeks.
Michelle, is there anything you want to add? Michelle Berry, you're on the call. Is there anything you would like to add for anything that we know is coming up in the near future?
So I'm sure you're all aware that 3 of the Equizone properties, the Teleflex building, the UGI building, and the Tower Health IT building, sold on December 23rd. The borough should receive sometime this month transfer tax in the amount of about $349,000.
Good for us.
And hopeful. I've been working with Equus and a potential buyer for one of the other buildings. So there may be a future decent amount size sale coming with further transfer tax revenue.
Okay, thank you.
I should also mention that of the 5 properties that I referred to where assessment appeals are pending, 35 Innovation Way is one of those properties.
And that's a Teleflex building for anybody who's not familiar with the addresses over there.
There's only a few people who are familiar with those addresses over there.
Me, the fire department.
Fire department, John, probably. Okay. All right, Phyllis, moving on.
All right. When we look at total real estate taxes collected for 2020, 4,342,000 were collected. That represents 24% of the borough's total revenue. When compared to 2019, you can see there was 330,000 more in 2020 than 19. When those same results are compared to the budget and what we anticipated, we had anticipated 4,313,000. We actually ended the year with a positive variance of 28,000. That's a result of 2 key lines. The interim taxes that were collected are changes that occur once redeveloped properties are reassessed and occupied. That resulted in a positive variance of 44,000. We also had less taxpayers taking advantage of the discount as a result of the extended flat period. But we had anticipated 85,000 in discounts to be taken, only 70,000 in discounts were taken. The net result is a positive variance of 28,000 when compared to the budget. In 2020, refunds of taxes that had previously been collected were only 3,900. That number for 2021 could be higher as a result of the assessment appeals. Estimated uncollected taxes by the tax collector at the year end as of Tuesday was just $58,000, 69 bills not collected, not significantly changed from the prior year. The mail service throughout 2020 has been not the best, to say the least. So Betsy is still receiving tax payments that were postmarked in 2020. So she is still processing some of the mail. She should have a final report available for council next week.
All right, Phyllis, I do have a question. This is my general question to anybody. What is the process at the end of the year, plus a few weeks or months, when we find out the people who have not paid their taxes? What is the process?
The process is that the tax collector will certify the list of taxes that have not been collected, and they are turned over to the county for collection. Those amounts that have been turned over to the county are what you see collected on the second line of that schedule, real estate taxes delinquent. So those are taxes that the county collects. They add it in addition to the penalty. There is an interest amount that is added.
I assume the county makes a few bucks on that.
They do.
Okay. All right. Fair enough. Thank you.
All right. Moving on. Local taxes totaled $4,965,000. That represents 27% of the borough's total revenue. When compared to 2019, that was an increase of 47,000. When compared to the budget, it was a negative variance of just $9,700. That's a result of the earned income tax receipt that was reported in November that was much larger than anticipated. The good news here, as Michelle referred to, is in the real estate tax. We had real estate transfer tax. We had budgeted for 2021 just 400,000 total for the year, with the sale of the properties that Michelle reported, with over 349,000 will be collected in the month of January alone. So we to receive additional revenue in 2021 more than budgeted. The same would occur with the earned income tax. It would appear as though our budget of $2,600,000 will most likely be conservative, and we should collect much more than that amount based on the 2020 receipts.
Okay. Again, even more reason why I think we need to compare 19, 20, and 21 from moving forward.
Okay, will do.
Hey, Steve, not that I'm a big spender, and I don't want to spend more than we have to, but we cut some of our capital projects back pretty significantly when we did the budget. I don't know if we should go back to infrastructure or to Jim Babb and say what would be your next on the list, and maybe just use a portion of those dollars to catch up on some of the capital projects that we pushed off that from last year and now pushed off again from this year.
Yeah,
I would just urge caution. We don't know what 2021 is going to be like yet. It's okay to come up with that list, but I wouldn't, my recommendation would be not to apportion any of those, some of that change in the fund balance that you're in, and designate those to those projects until we kind of have a little feel for what the economic impact is going to be for the current crisis yet. I mean, I'm just throwing caution to the wind. That's all.
No, I think you're absolutely right, Greg. I mean, I'm always on the conservative side as well. I just know that we really pushed some things that probably should have been done last year, and some things that should have been done this year, and just absolutely cut it to the bones. And
I would think that yes, agreeing, taking that a step further, if there are some things that we kind of put on the back burner, and they may, have some safety, deal with some safety concerns. And we always address that first. We try to, obviously. If there's something that is in the middle ground where that's concerned, maybe we can, start looking at that stuff again. But some of the other things that would be nice to have, or we need down the road somewhere, maybe those we can keep. I'd just like to have a few more months under our belt before we start.
Most of the capital projects aren't going to be happening yet for a while anyway, but
Right.
I agree that I think we could start looking at freeing up some of those dollars for some of those types of expenses, especially if we can marry those expenses, and Jim Babb let us know, but especially if we can marry those expenses with things that we've already budgeted. For example, if we only budgeted, I don't know, for blacktopping or resurfacing a certain road for 5 blocks, maybe we can do it for 7 blocks since the company's going to be there and do all that kind of good stuff. So let's let Jim Babb talk about it, and then we can discuss it moving forward. And we'll take it to infrastructure also. So Michelle, if you can make sure we remember to talk about this on infrastructure.
Will do.
Okay. Moving forward. Thanks, Greg. Thanks, Keith.
All right, what you see now is the grant activity. Throughout the year, we reported a negative variance as a result of time grants received in 2019 and
Lean
not
up towards
20.
your computer, please, Phyllis. We can't hear you.
All right, so I start again on the grants. Throughout the year, can you hear me?
Yep.
Okay. Throughout the year, I had reported a negative variance of grant activity as a result of time grants were received in 2019, not in 20. In December of 20, 3 large grants were received. From the Berks County Conservation District, we received final reimbursement on alley work that had been performed in 2019. We had expected 40,000. Final receipt was for 49,900. as a result of adding additional engineering fees. The full amount of the COVID CARES Act reimbursement was received in December for $96,000. We also received reimbursement of Barwis payment app number 1 and number 2. So that our total grant revenue, these one-time grants, total $454,000, changing the previously reported negative variance to a positive variance, $213,000. Of that amount, only $42,000 had been budgeted. So the variance when compared to the budget was actually $412,000 to the positive. If we go on, I can show you the activity as
You're gonna have to lean into the computer or Sturge is still breaking up.
all right. In December, a third change order had been approved, bringing the total contract price to $1,785,000. The first payment at, excuse me? Can you hear me?
Yep.
Okay. The
Lean
first
forward.
payment app, which represented work through the end of October, had been approved by the Infrastructure Committee in November. Council approved it in December. Payment was made in December and reimbursement was received in December. The payment app number 1 was a wash for the borough. Payment app number 2 was approved by the Infrastructure Committee and was reimbursed by the DCED. That amount at $87,000 represents the amount that was placed in reserve. That amount has not yet been approved by council. That should occur next week. Payment will follow. The third payment app, which represents work through the end of December, which will bring the project to about 26% complete, has not yet been approved by Infrastructure Council, and obviously payment has not been made. So Keith, to address your concerns, I've placed in reserves an amount that we have received that we have not yet paid. There are no amounts that we have paid.
Yeah, I couldn't understand the last part, so you're breaking up. So the 154,000 was received from the state but not paid?
No.
No.
154 has not yet been paid and has not been received.
Okay.
154 is fully outstanding. The 87 was received but not paid.
Okay.
And so the proceeds are sitting in the reserves.
And that's in the reserve now. Okay.
Correct. All
Great.
right. So I will pass the schedule along to Melissa for inclusion at the Infrastructure Committee.
Okay.
Okay, Steve, is that what you're looking for?
Yep.
Okay. The last schedule is other December activity that occurred. The dump truck has been delivered and has been paid for. It had been budgeted for $175,000. The actual cost was $157,000. So it was actually almost $18,000 less than budgeted. The plan to fund the purchase of the dump truck was to pay the first $70,000 from liquid fuels and the balance from the water fund. However, the liquid fuels funds have recently been audited and changed the way we allocated the purchase price. What happened was the 2019 liquid fuels should have been audited early in 2020. The pandemic prevented the auditors from coming on site to perform their audit. It is reviewed by PennDOT and also by the Auditor's General's Office. The PennDOT review occurred in late October, when all the payments for 2020 have already occurred. What PennDOT found when they did a spot check of certain expenditures was that the lines that were painted in 2019, not all of the sizes were included on the bid specs. The bid is prepared by the Berks County Purchasing Co-op, not by the borough. and it did not include all the sizes that the borough chose to paint in 2019. The Auditor General's office subsequently audited 100% of the borough's activity. That audit concluded on December 23rd and resulted in no findings at all. That report is pending, and the 2019 liquid fuels audit will be fine. However, because the audit occurred so late in 2020, the same circumstances occurred in 2020, in that lines were painted and all the sides were not included in the bid specs. So the PennDOT district manager suggested that the borough not use liquid fuels funds to pay for lines that were not included in the bid specs. So the general fund reimbursed the liquid fuels fund for $46,000, representing the cost of those lines. So the $46,000 was added to the $70,000 that was budgeted from the liquid fuels to pay for the purchase of dump trucks. So that the bottom line effect on the liquid fuel funds is that we spent exactly what had been anticipated. The water fund spent less because they picked up the balance. So where the water fund had budgeted $105,000, the actual cost of the dump truck charged to the water fund was $40,000. And the general fund picked up the cost of lines that were not included in the bids. Now for 2021, Jim will ensure that the Berks County Purchasing Co-op includes all the proper size lines in the bid. Does everyone follow that?
I have a clue. Yeah.
Okay.
Anybody have any questions?
I could only hear part of it. So the general fund did or didn't, did the general fund end up paying more than what we thought they were going to?
Yes, the general fund reimbursed the liquid fuels fund for the cost of lines that were not in the bid.
But but less was taken from the water than was budgeted.
Correct, because the water fund would not pay for line painting.
Got it, Keith?
It's clear.
I can't hear it. I'm
Right at the end there, Phyllis, you faded out again. So,
the water
Mr.
fund.
Chairman, I have an objection on the Sunshine Act. I think that the technical difficulties in this conversation are getting really above a certain limit of how this can be understood by anybody. Also, this recording will be completely useless. I mean, for anybody who's going to listen to this.
Oh, Adrian, they're going to hear the same thing we're hearing. So let's
cannot follow.
They're going to hear the same thing that we're hearing and talking about. Phyllis, if you could just try to talk a little bit louder into the computer.
I think it's a matter of connection. It's not about how loud she talks. I think she has a connection.
Thank you, Mr. Jadick. We'll keep going. Go ahead.
I can conduct future meetings at Borough Hall with permission rather than trying to do it remotely with a laptop.
If you can get permission, that's fine.
Phyllis,
Right.
you can also call in and just turn the audio off on your Zoom and just call in and talk on your phone.
Okay.
Okay, let's see if we can keep pushing on.
All right. One other unusual December transaction was that there was 27 pays in 2020. That last pay occurred on December 31st. The last time that occurred was in 2008. As to not skew comparative results, the entire cost of that payroll was concentrated on one budget line. We had estimated the cost of that additional payroll to be $234,000. The cost was actually $231,000, so we were pretty much on target. And finally, I just wanted to update you on the audits that are underway. As I indicated, the liquid fuels audit concluded on December 23rd with no findings. I am currently in the middle of the pension audit for the plan years 2017, 18, and 19. That began just before Christmas. That will be ongoing and will probably take most of the month of January. The independent audit by Herbine is scheduled to begin on February 8th. Michelle and I have a planning meeting on January 13th to talk about how that audit will be conducted remotely.
Okay.
And
Steve,
that's
is this where is this at the end of the year then? Was 2020 the year that they're going to reforecast the pension thing that we always talk about?
January 1st of 2021 is a valuation date. It is not connected with the audit. That is the evaluation date. I will be filling out surveys shortly to start that process.
But that should have ended in our favor this year versus the 2 years ago when it was a detriment.
Yeah, 2 years ago
Yes.
we had that traumatic December in the stock market, and it negatively affected all that stuff. This year we would think that it would be the market performed pretty well. So we'll see how that goes. Okay.
All right. Any questions on December?
No.
All right. The last issue has to do with check signing as it relates to the reorganization of the committee, the promotion of Michelle, and the availability of check signers. We have a resolution from 2018 that appointed the authority of the borough manager and the treasurer to inform the bank of changes to the signers. We did that so that each time there was a change in council or committee, that it was not necessary to get signatures. You recall that was a tedious process. So Chris had reviewed the forms with the changes that have occurred in management and had recommended that we update this resolution. It was last signed by Marty and Paul. Melissa, if you can scroll down.
Yeah, the signing by Marty and Paul is not a problem because they were in those offices when they signed those, so those resolutions are effective. The problem I see is that the attachment, which is in front of you, identifies the position of manager secretary as being one of the persons in addition to the treasury who can notify the bank of changes in signers. And the council has adopted a new organizational chart that is going to have Melissa as the borough secretary. She's been the assistant secretary. We need to confirm that appointment with a resolution of council, which I will prepare for your action next week, having Melissa as the borough secretary. But then this resolution doesn't make sense to have a manager secretary position as having the authority to change signers. So what I would suggest is that we have a new resolution adopting a new certification to VIST that says that the borough manager and the borough treasurer, rather than the borough manager secretary and the borough treasurer, have the authority to change signers on the bank accounts. So that's one change that I'm recommending. And then the other thing is that according to Phyllis, Customers Bank doesn't recognize this kind of assignment of authority to change signers. Customers Bank wants an actual resolution of council to change any signers. So we would need a separate resolution to Customers Bank designating the authorized signers on the Customers Bank accounts.
And you're going to prepare both of those?
Yes.
For next week?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. So actually it's 3 different resolutions. One appointing Melissa as Borough Secretary. One, authorizing the Borough Manager and Borough Treasurer to assign signers for the VIST accounts, and a third one designating the authorized signers for the customers' bank accounts.
And Phyllis, that's enough people to have for signers?
Yeah, the list of signers for the customer's bank account has been limited to just Pat, Paul, and who is it?
Oh, I thought,
Tom All, yes.
so
Because
who,
the only time we sign customers' checks is when we're transferring money that has accumulated from the daily transactions back over to this, rather than getting 9 different people to sign the customer form. We limited it to 3.
okay, so for customers, who should the 3 signers be? I mean, Pat and Tom can continue in that capacity, but we should have a third signer for the customer's bank accounts.
Should be the treasurer.
Add Greg.
Yeah, as you say, add the treasurer.
Treasurer.
Okay, so Pat, Tom, and Greg, and I believe that customers will probably want us to use their form. Can you get that from them,
Yes.
Phyllis, and share it with me for my review?
I will do that.
And also, are all the account numbers that are listed in that 2018 certification for VIST, are those account numbers all up to date?
Well, I would need to remove the road fund since that has been closed, and I will confirm the ICS account number.
All right, please provide that information to me. Thank you.
Will do.
Okay. So no action needed at this point.
No, this is just for your information. Well, actually, we should have a motion authorizing those resolutions that I described. Recommending that they be enacted or adopted rather by council.
I'll make that motion.
Second.
Okay, I hear a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any against? The ayes have it. Okay,
Thank you.
moving on.
That's everything I have.
Okay, does anybody else have anything for the good of the group? I have 2 more minutes I want to talk about, but does anybody else have anything?
Steve, I have one informational item if I could pass on to you.
Go for it.
Recently, we've, this will be a surprise to everyone, I've encountered a mechanical problem with the tower at the fire department. It is out currently getting an estimate of repairs. It could involve a pretty major expense involving a turbo problem in the engine. Chief Hackman is getting back to me with the information, but the repair could be, double digit. Once we get that information back, I will present that hopefully to council on Tuesday evening. But we also may be now at the point of time, we probably will have to make the repair, but we probably need to liquidate that vehicle.
We need to liquidate the vehicle.
I would say at this point after the repair, Steve,
After the
I think,
repair.
I think we, need to then have a discussion with the fire chief. But, it'd be my recommendation that we start the process in looking to put that vehicle for sale or put it out for bid.
Okay, I assume that would have to go through the Fire and Police Committee, but.
Correct. And I haven't had a chance to talk to Bill this morning. I tried earlier, but he's on the call. So, but I'm sure we'll, I'm trying to get further information because the estimate that came back from the shop is written in a language that I cannot understand. So we're trying to get further direction and put it in plain English as to what's wrong with it and go from there. But the preliminary estimate on the repair is close to $25,000. So that was not good news for the new year.
Sale sign on it.
Right. So we just need to look at those options, but unfortunately, we're gonna have to do something with it before we, sell it. But I'll keep you in the loop and hopefully have further information for Tuesday evening's council meeting.
Starting to think it might be better as a reef down in Cape May.
No argument.
Yeah, that works out. Okay. All right. Then if no one else has anything else, I do have 2 things. And Phyllis, this is just my thoughts and I think some of the committee thoughts. And if anybody has any questions, obviously we already talked about, I think we need to compare because of 2020 being such an anomaly. We got to compare everything with 2019, 20, and then obviously the current 2021. I'd like to work towards um, budgeting by month. And we can probably do that by using 3 years worth of historical information. So I think that's something I'd like to work. I mean, every time we talk about everything, and I get some of our expenses are done at the end of the year and some of our bigger income is at one time of the year. But I think we can, over 3 years, figure out where we stand in the budget. I've always done budgets where here's where we stand in our budget year to date. And here's what our budget was for X month. So I think we can start working towards that. I think that'd be a good idea. And if we want to sit down and talk about it, we can. And I'd also like to, within that, and I think we almost have this by default, but looking at an operational budget separate from obviously the capital expense budget. And I think if you just basically took out the capital expense budget, you almost have the operating budget, but I'd like to look into getting a little bit more detailed on what does it cost us, as Keith would say, to turn the lights on in the morning and get the borough moving. Okay, does anybody have any questions or comments on that? Phyllis, you can too.
No.
So basically, Steve, what we're saying is instead of dividing our revenue and expenses by 12 to compare, that's an example. We want to see the revenue and expenses budgeted in a month which they're actually anticipated to be received or spent.
Correct. And we can use 3 years of historical data with the understanding that 2020 was a significant, especially on the expense side, an anomaly. So anybody have any problems with that on the committee? Anybody off the committee have a problem with it? Okay, then we'll move towards that moving forward. Does anybody else have anything else for the good of the group? Well, I thank everybody for their volunteering for this committee for another year, and look forward to hopefully a greener pasture in 2021. Meeting is adjourned.
Very good. Thank you.
Thank you.